Welcome to the MicroLife Cafe. I'm your host, Sarah from MicroLife Fertilizers. We're talking all things organic horticulture and beyond, so pull up a chair and pour up a cup with us. Today we're sitting down with Ryan, a soil health advocate and the sales manager of MicroLife, who has spent his career challenging the way we think about fertilization and plant care. From backyard gardens to large-scale agricultural operations, Ryan is on a mission to shift the industry's focus from feeding plants to feeding the living system beneath them. And today, he's here to break it all down for us. Hi, Ryan. Thanks for coming in. Can you share with the audience a little bit about yourself and what you do for work?
Sure. So I'm Ryan Laird. I'm the sales manager for MicroLife Organic Fertilizer. I've been in the industry since about 2007. And over that time, I've had the opportunity to work on both sides of the industry. I started with a large landscape design firm, which gave me hands-on experience managing properties and seeing how different inputs perform in the real world. Now with MicroLife, I get to take that experience and apply it across multiple different areas.
That's awesome. So let's talk a little bit about plant care. You like to say NPK alone doesn't grow plants, but soil does. Can you break that down for us a little bit?
Sure. So NPK matters, but to me, it's just numbers on a label. Plants don't eat numbers. They take in nutrients that have to be processed through soil biology. If your soil isn't functioning, you can apply all the NPK that you want and still not have the results. And so the soil is the engine, NPK is the fuel. If the engine isn't running, more fuel doesn't fix it. So instead of asking, what am I feeding the plant? I tell people to start asking, what condition is the soil in, and start from there.
Nice. Oh, and can you also break down for those who don't know, what is NPK?
So NPK is nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and those are usually the first numbers that you see on a bag, that N, P, and K.
So what role does carbon play in soil health, and why do you think it gets overlooked in mainstream horticulture?
So carbon is really the backbone of soil health, and the easiest way to think about it is in the form of organic matter. That's what carbon is. In a usable form in the soil, organic matter. Carbon feeds the microbes, and the microbes are what make nutrients available. So if you're not building up or adding organic matter, you're not feeding the system that actually does the work. Most programs focus on quick release nutrients, which can give a short-term response, but they don't build anything, and then you have to chase results. Carbon, organic matter, it builds soil over time, which gives you better structure, increased water holding abilities, and better nutrient retention. So if you want long-term results, you have to think about building up carbon to feed microbes, not just applying the nutrients and hoping they get to the plant.
That makes a lot of sense. And thank you for simplifying a complex topic. I feel like we're talking about carbon a lot lately, so that's really good. So how does a living soil system work? What's happening underground that people might not be aware of?
So there's an underground community living in the soil. And I think that's the part people often forget. We tend to look at soil as lifeless dirt, but it's really a functioning ecosystem made up of bacteria, fungi, protozoa, earthworms, beneficial insects, and countless microorganisms, all playing different roles. It's very similar to a healthy community or even a business. Everybody has a job. Some organisms break down organic matter, some cycle nutrients, some protect the plant from diseases, and others help improve soil structure and water movement. Then the plant joins that community by releasing sugars through its roots to feed those microbes, and in return, those microbes help gather nutrients and support plant health.
Now, we all know the classic Americana is the white picket fence, beautiful lawn, perfectly manicured. How do you think we got away from looking at soil as this like living, breathing ecosystem?
Well, I think people kind of began to get reliant upon seeing what they saw on TV, those marketing things. And it's when you see something simple, it's easy to go after it and do it, but you don't really understand what's going on underneath. And so when people kind of just focus on the above ground, I think they miss the below ground, and that damages the microbes and kind of puts people on a dependency program rather than helping the microbes.
Absolutely. And whenever biology is functioning properly, it does the heavy lifting. What does that look like in practice in a real landscape or growing situation that you've had experience with?
So when the community underground is functioning the way it's supposed to, you start seeing the system become more efficient. You're not watering as often because your soil holds moisture better. You're not applying as much fertilizer because nutrients are being cycled more efficiently. You're not constantly reaching for fungicides and pesticides because healthier plants tend to defend themselves better. And one of the biggest things people notice is consistency. You stop seeing these big growth spikes followed by stress, decline, and trying to fix problems all over again. Instead, plants grow more steadily, they handle environmental stress better, and you're spending less time reacting.
And that's really critical, especially whenever it comes to plants. And you have had this really broad range of experience being hands-on and also in the sales side and also in the educational portion. And I feel like that really gives you a wide understanding of how all of this works together. So that doesn't happen overnight. Was there a moment in your career that really changed the way you look at the soil?
Yeah, while working for that landscaping company that I mentioned earlier, I had a customer with a small kind of rock hardscape pathway. We'll call it like a 4 foot by 4 foot area. And they had some weeds growing in that area. And so I went over there. This is kind of when I sprayed herbicides and didn't really know anything. But I saw a few weeds, maybe 4 or 5, and sprayed the area with an herbicide. But instead of just spraying those few weeds, I sprayed the entire 4 foot by 4 foot area, thinking that I was preventing future weeds. I came back the following week, and there were way more weeds than there were before.
Wow.
Worse than before. And that's when it clicked. I wasn't solving the weed issue. I was creating the conditions for more weeds. And that moment pushed me into trying to understand soil health and help me realize it's not about reacting to symptoms. It's about managing the environment.
Yeah, that's a really good answer. And there's just, I feel like so many people have been in that position before. And, it's just like, oh, I'm trying to be preventative. And then it's like, oh no, not the way to go. What do you think some of the most common challenges people have with soil amendments and fertilizers are?
I actually think one of the biggest mistakes people make is inconsistency. So a lot of people either don't apply enough product, they don't follow the recommendation or the recommended application rate, or they stop a program too early because they're expecting instant results, and that doesn't happen. They'll put something out once, wait a few weeks, and if their lawn or landscape or field doesn't completely transform overnight, they assume the product didn't work. The other challenge is people constantly chasing quick fixes instead of building a long-term system. Healthy soil takes consistency. Just like going to the gym once doesn't get you in shape, one application of a fertilizer usually isn't going to solve years of soil neglect. The better approach is following a program, staying consistent, and giving the carbon and biology time to work.
Yeah, and that's just like basically soils, plants, people, we have so much in common. So I think consistency is key. And you work across residential, commercial, agriculture settings. Once you're in this game, those are all very different ways of operating soil and systems and plants. How does your approach to biological soil management shift depending on the scale or the context?
So the principles don't change. To me, the scale does. So homeowners want it to be simple. Professionals want efficiency and quick results. And farmers want a return on their investment for what they're putting in there.
Yeah.
But all of them are managing soil biology. It's the same system, just explained differently depending upon who you're talking to.
That makes perfect sense. And can you talk about the difference between feeding the plant versus feeding the soil and why that distinction matters for long-term outcomes?
Yeah, this is my favorite part. So feeding the plant is short-term. Feeding the soil is long-term. If you feed the plant directly, you're responsible every time that plant wants to be fed or needs nutrients. It becomes dependent upon you. If you feed the soil starts working for you. It's the difference between doing all the work yourself and building a system that works on its own.
Wow. Sounds like a pretty good strategy to me. And how does a healthier soil biology reduce the need for pesticides and fungicides over time?
Healthy soil creates stronger plants, and stronger plants are naturally more resistant to pests and diseases. So beneficial microbes also compete with and suppress harmful pathogens. So instead of constantly reacting with chemicals, you're preventing problems biologically. You may not eliminate inputs, but you reduce dependence on them over time.
So I've heard there is this thing called the chemical merry-go-round. Can you share with people what that is? And is that something that's required to have a nice looking landscape?
Sure. Yeah. So it is not required to have a nice looking landscape. I will say that. But I do think this is also a part of kind of helping to reduce pesticides and fungicides. A lot of times people will see that their soil needs something or their grass needs something, and they'll go buy a junk fertilizer. Well, that junk fertilizer doesn't really feed the soil, so then they're going to have a pest problem, or they may have a disease problem. And so then somebody goes to the store and buys a pesticide or an insecticide, and then they have weeds, so then they buy an herbicide. And so you're just stuck on this merry-go-round of fertilizer, treatment, 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 waiting, fertilizer, treatment, treatment. And it's just a never-ending cycle of not fixing things.
Wow. That's a really interesting concept. And you are also an incredibly creative person. And I think that whenever you have creative people working with plants and looking at the environment, it really gives people a new way of looking at the world as a whole and kind of how everything interacts together. And you're super into technology, and you've been working on integrating drone technology into land management. I'm super curious, what does that look like, and where do you see that going in the future?
So I think a lot of people, when they think of drones, they think of photography, videography, recreational use. Makes complete sense. That is what they are used for. But a lot of times these days, and getting more prevalent, is people using drones to see things from an aerial view. When you look at things from the top, you can kind of see disease pressure. You can see inconsistent fertilizer applications.
Wow.
All these things that can come into play when you look at something from the sky. I think the other part that drones are taking into account are, and this is very new, but drones can now apply fertilizers, soil amendments from the sky. And it's cool because sometimes it rains and a big tractor or a combine can't get out on a field because it's going to damage the crops, or it may even get stuck. And so now being able to apply things with drones changes the game and allows farmers, large properties, ranchers to be able to put material out without having to wait on the weather.
Wow, I think that's so incredibly innovative, and I just love it when our industry is kind of getting involved with new things. And speaking of the industry, where do you think the industry as a whole is headed?
So I think the industry is starting to shift, but I still think it's slow. I think people are realizing that adding more synthetic inputs isn't sustainable long term, and that's both financially and environmentally. The shift is toward biology. I think people are looking at it and seeing it, becoming more aware, checking where their products are coming from versus just kind of grabbing something off the shelf. And so the ones who understand early are going to tend to be ahead of the curve. And so I do think we're shifting. It's just still slow.
And is the broader horticulture and agriculture world starting to catch up to the soil first way that you were talking about earlier?
I think they are. I think that people are becoming more aware of where things are coming from. I think in the news, we're hearing a lot more about damaging companies doing things to crops or people or things like that. And so the more awareness we can bring to that, I think people are then beginning to think, where does my food come from? What is applied on my food? I definitely need to wash these vegetables and fruits before I eat them.
Yeah.
And so I still think it's a slow shift, but I do think people are moving that way.
It's such great news. And this has been so fun. We appreciate your innovative look and your really deep understanding of all of these things. Where can people find you online to keep up with you and maybe get in contact for any questions or something?
Sure. So you can find me pretty much on any social media as Mr. MicroLife. That is my tag. You can also go to mrmicrolife.com, and I've got lots of information, things that I share from our website for MicroLife Fertilizer, and articles that I've written because you've allowed me to write some articles, and just my contact information and stuff like that.
Cool. Thanks. We will definitely have you on again soon.
Thanks.